good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a late edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 15th of 2018, December. And my name is Larry Love. I'm your host. Anyway, we're here every week to bring you the latest information on medical cannabis, the fight for medical use and the fight for recreational use. And, of course, the information comes from all over the globe. We have stories from all over today. But, of course, the breaking story this week, internationally and nationally, was the Farm Bill. And, of course, there's good things in it and there's terrible things in it. We're going to talk about that and the misconception that CBD is now legal in all 50 states. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to read you a couple of things and comments from some of the longtime experts. Also, here in New Mexico, one of the licensed producers, well, quote, almost licensed producers, they sort of got their license in a weird way, Ultra Health, they're trying to sue the Department of Health in regards to the licensed manufacturers who take the grown cannabis and make different edibles and capsules and salves and so forth. Ultra Health is trying to get that approved licensees thrown out. They think it's against the law, so they're really just rocking the boat and hurting patients again. Ultra Health, Duke, come on, man. We're going to talk to Peter St. Cyr about that. He's a award-winning journalist, and he's the one that posted the lawsuit the other day. We're going to talk to him. But first, of course, what we need to talk about is deciphering the Farm Bill, Mitch McConnell's Farm Bill. Basically, my understanding is that it is still a Schedule 1 and is under the control of the FDA as an ingestible product. This is what everybody believes. Now, here is Veronica Carpio, a little clip from her conference call the other day discussing this. And there's another gentleman who's also an activist in Colorado speaking as well. But listen carefully to what Veronica has to say about CBD being legal throughout the country.
I just want to say that this whole hemp bill is the whole hemp bill. This is Dwayne Sternholm, Colorado Hemp Processing Cooperative. The whole hemp bill, they have a year to get all their regs in place. So really nothing's going to change for the next year. At least not very quickly.
You're correct. There's some people saying the projections of 6 months to 1 year. Colorado is unique in the aspect that we have been very forward thinking. We passed something called the Hemp Foods Bill last year. We actually turned all parts of the plant and defined it and cannabinoids into food additive or herb. It is not considered a drug here unless it's FDA approved, but we're separate. It is not considered an adulterated ingredient or mislabeled. So we passed probably the most important hemp legislation in the country. This is now a turnkey template bill that all the states could use. I encourage every state, whether legal or not, to try to implement a hemp food bill and tribe during this next legislative session or the next few months, because that is what protects our hemp foods and products being produced outside necessarily of FDA jurisdiction. And FDA is our problem because they are in charge of all things human use and consumption, and they say CBD, period, the compound itself, is not approved for food or human use and consumption unless FDA approved. So we have nothing in this farm bill, not one part of that farm bill makes CBD legal for human use and consumption, period.
Period. Okay. Now, Veronica obviously has been around for a long time and is on top of writing laws and so forth. There's a gentleman named Richard Rose who has been in the hemp industry since the beginning. I actually unknowingly was eating his hemp cheese about 20 years ago that he used to put out. His comments are this, a few comments. One, hemp is actually not descheduled. Two, it throws CBD under the FDA bus, just like Veronica just said. Three, allows no pot felons, the people who got us here. And of course, now with a little sarcasm, he says, other than that, it's effing awesome. So basically, Richard Rose says they threw CBD under the FDA bus. And of course, the thing about felons is just despicable. Cristala Mosato Allen, who is also another pioneer in this industry and knows a lot of stuff. She's been guest on this show. She posted on Facebook in regards to the CBD being thrown under the FDA bus. She says, that's exactly the whole truth. Even if CBD salespeople don't like it and market it as legal in all 50 states, those of us that don't own CBD companies have no reason to lie one way or the other. On top of the FDA language, this section says that states with laws more stringent than the Farm Bill will remain in place. So 12 plus states have GW Pharmaceuticals CBD only laws that read, quote, prescribed by doctor only and can only be FDA approved product. Will still be the law regardless of the FDA or USDA. If your CBD product is not FDA approved, it is illegal contraband in that state. Now, the Brookings Institute, they analyzed this and they put out a little article. This is at brookings.edu. This was written by John Hudak on Friday. The Farm Bill, Hemp Legislation, and the Status of CBD, the explainer. Now, I just pulled a couple paragraphs that I thought were really important. Cannabidiol, or CBD, is made legal under specific circumstances. One big myth that exists about the Farm Bill is that CBD, a non-intoxicating compound found in cannabis, is legalized. It is true that Section 12619 of the Farm Bill removes hemp-derived products from its Schedule I status under the Controlled Substance Act, but the legislation does not legalize CBD generally. Hudak goes on to say, as I have noticed elsewhere in this blog, CBD generally remains a Schedule I substance under federal law. The Farm Bill and an unrelated recent action by the Department of Justice creates exceptions to the Schedule I status in certain situations. The Farm Bill ensures that any cannabinoid, a set of chemical compounds found in the cannabis plant that is derived from hemp, will be legal if and only that hemp is produced in the manner consistent with the Farm Bill, associated federal regulations, association state regulations, and by a licensed grower. All other cannabinoids produced by any other setting remain a Schedule I substance under the federal law and thus illegal. The one exception is pharmaceutical-grade CBD products that have been approved by FDA, which currently include one drug, GW Pharmaceuticals Epidiolex. Even CBD products produced by state legal medicinal or adult use cannabis programs are illegal products under federal law, both within states and across state lines. This legal reality is an important distinction for consumer protection. There are numerous myths about the legality of CBD products and their availability. Under the 2018 Farm Bill, there will be more broadly available legal CBD products. However, this does not mean that all CBD products are legal moving forward. Knowing your producer and whether they are legal and legitimate will be an important part of consumer research in a post-2018 Farm Bill world. Wow, complicated, and some of it is not real good. But let's move on. Staying here in New Mexico for this first report, the 2019 legislative session is coming up, and New Mexico proponents of recreational marijuana are eyeing 2019 to pass this bill. Here's this report.
To our big story now at 10, Santa Fe City Council approved a resolution urging state lawmakers to legalize recreational marijuana. So after a blue wave during our last election in New Mexico, is 2019 the year for legal weed? Our Ryan Laughlin joins us. Ryan, what are lawmakers saying?
Cassie, nobody is making guarantees, but some lawmakers are saying it's the best chance they've ever had for legalization here. And those in the cannabis industry are preparing for a boom in demand.
It's extremely exciting for me. It's hard to contain excitement sometimes.
Eric Howard is in charge of growing all of this, medical marijuana. Is this enough to meet demand in New Mexico?
No, not even close.
Right now, by law, this grow operation in Bernalillo is limited to just 450 plants. But they're expanding. They're soon going to have over 2 acres of operational greenhouse production. But how many of these greenhouses will be growing all depends on what happens in Santa Fe. So you think 2019 might be the year?
It might be.
Stephanie Waddell is the manager of the Bernalillo Ultra Health. She says they're waiting for a judge's ruling to expand their medical grow operation. But they've got eyes on the future as well.
It's for the medical, but if rec does happen, we will be ready for it.
You know, I think the chances have never been better.
Javier Martinez is backing legislation to legalize in 2019. A Democrat himself, he acknowledges the recent blue wave could help the chances for legalization. But he knows there's concerns about how it's done on both sides of the aisle.
I think that those voices that might have some reservations about it can actually bring a lot to the table.
He says the proposed bill will make the legal pot buying age 21, focus on protecting medical marijuana patients, and set aside tax revenue for drug treatment resources. Back in Bernalillo, it's a wait-and-see game to see how and when this operation will be growing in all greenhouses.
We're just brushing the surface, so I'm excited to see what the next few years brings us as far as discovery.
And you know, Cassie, we got a new governor coming in. Governor-elect Michelle Lujan Grisham says, in part, she's committed to legalizing recreational cannabis in a way that protects medical cannabis patients, improves public safety, and prevents underage usage.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
So, as you all know, my loyal listeners, I say separate medical from rec. I think every state should do it. We have different consumers in those two different industries. So, another thing about an important issue for many, many people is your Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms, okay, to buy a gun. And of course, many people want to buy guns, but if they're in the medical cannabis program, they can't be sold a gun. So there's a doctor in Pennsylvania that is suing to end the ban on gun ownership for medical marijuana users.
People are using medical marijuana here in Pennsylvania, but that means that they cannot own guns. Tonight, one doctor is challenging that law. Channel 11's Marlisa Goldsmith is live now with the impact his challenge could have on this growing industry. Marlisa.
At this point, Pennsylvanians are faced with an ultimatum, either medical marijuana or guns. But tonight, a Pennsylvania doctor is hoping to change all of that by filing this lawsuit. In a recently filed lawsuit, a Pennsylvania doctor who uses medical marijuana is suing the Trump administration for the right to own a gun.
The seller correctly said, "Do you use marijuana?" The doctor correctly answered that he did, and the person at the store also correctly said, "Then I can't sell you a gun."
Attorney John Weston told me over the phone today his client, Dr. Matthew Roman, uses medical cannabis to treat his post-traumatic stress disorder. The denial of a firearm, which was upheld by a federal appeals court, is what he calls unconstitutional.
The federal government can't deprive a person of his constitutional right to own a gun based on the fact that he's certified to take medical marijuana under state law.
Neither the NRA nor Department of Justice responded to our request for comment today. But when we spoke with locals, many had mixed opinions.
Sometimes it's hard to tell who should have firearms and who shouldn't. And how do you cope with those? Where do you draw lines? I don't know.
Deny me the rights of gun ownership, and I don't own a gun, but you would stop me? I'm in America, the greatest country in the world. This is un-American.
Roman's attorney is expecting to hear from the Department of Justice within the next 30 days. Reporting live from Pittsburgh tonight, I'm Marlisa Goldsmith, Channel 11 News.
So we're watching that, of course, to see if that's going to set precedent elsewhere. But I'm assuming that if you already have a firearm and you're in the medical cannabis programs in your state, don't ask, don't tell. All right, some good news in regards to cannabis and medicine. Diabetes and cannabis. This could be the new diabetes drug.
Looking to ward off diabetes? You might try lighting up a joint. New research published in the American Journal of Medicine found a link between marijuana and blood sugar control. Weed smokers in the study had lower levels of insulin resistance. High resistance can lead to diabetes. The pot users also had smaller waistlines. That's another positive because weight around the middle can indicate or be a precursor to diabetes. Scientists say the receptors in the brain triggered by marijuana may speed up metabolism.
Well, let's hope that there's a way of dosing ourselves to help our blood sugar levels. Diabetes is terrible. A lot of people have it, and it's because of obviously bad eating. Some of it is hereditary. All right, next up, of course, research has been around in other countries for years and years and years. Israel, the Netherlands, Spain, and so forth, Germany. But even without proof, CBD is finding a niche as a cure-all. Here is this report.
In the Kentucky countryside, hiding behind a crop of corn, lies a tidy row of a mysterious plant thought to have medicinal powers.
This is hemp.
Hemp is a type of cannabis plant that contains a chemical called CBD. It doesn't make you high like marijuana, but it is creating a national buzz.
CBD. CBD. CBD.
Sprouting up everywhere and in everything. CBD-infused lattes, beauty products, baked goods, even dog treats. And as the CBD frenzy grows, so does the confusion.
Does CBD work?
Yes. It works for anxiety. It works for pain. It works for any inflammatory condition.
No, we don't know any of that. If you go in with this expectation and with all of society saying this is going to cure you of whatever ails you, it often will.
Don't tell that to Laura Freeman. 12 years ago, she was thrown off of a horse and suffered bone-crippling pain until she tried a surprising treatment.
The CBD worked and it was an absolute miracle. Seriously.
Now, Laura has turned her farm into a hemp empire, making and selling everything from CBD lotions to chocolates. In Colorado, Dr. Joe Cohen has stopped delivering babies, instead prescribing CBD to patients with an array of illnesses.
You need to take this twice a day, every day.
Earlier this year, the FDA approved the first and only CBD medication, a treatment for two rare forms of epilepsy.
There's no proof that CBD works for anything other than seizures, yet you're prescribing everything from pain control to Alzheimer's.
There is no proof from a traditional medical perspective. There's plenty of proof from seeing patients and seeing their results.
CBD supplements are not tested, approved, or regulated by the FDA, but CBD fans are not waiting for proof.
I couldn't be doing what I'm doing today without CBD. It's changed my life.
A phenomenon growing faster than the science.
Dr. John is with us. Are there any dangers in taking this stuff?
And Kate, CBD can interfere with other drugs you're taking, causing possible dangerous interactions with some, like blood thinners, and making other medicines less effective, like some types of birth control. So checking with your doctor or pharmacist to prevent these interactions, extremely important.
And how do you know what you're taking?
For the most part, you really don't, because there have been reports of fake CBD oil being sold online and in stores. So your best bet is to ask the seller for the certificate from the lab that tested that CBD oil for purity.
Absolutely good advice. Whenever you buy some CBD products, make sure it's tested and ask them, even if it's online, a lot of these CBD places are posting their test results to see its purity and so forth, and how much CBD is actually in it. For instance, there's some places that are selling 1,500 milligrams of CBD, which is like 1.5 grams, for $80, and there's some people that are selling it for $180. So be sure that you check out and read the labels. Make sure you know how many milligrams of CBD or any kind of cannabis, THC or whatever, and divide it about what you're paying, and make sure you're paying a good price for it. Okay, so of course, medical marijuana is providing relief for a lot of people, while the cannabis research is catching up, and that's because our country wasn't allowed to do research, but it's starting to happen, even though there's tons of it out there from everywhere else.
Separate car accidents changed the lives of Robbie Pinamanini and Alex Jordan.
The vehicle I was in hit black ice, and we ended up spinning for quite a while and then flipped multiple times.
Another car hit us, and then we ran into a light pole.
Both suffered broken bones in their spine, leaving them with chronic, severe pain. They could have turned to powerful, addictive opioid painkillers.
Whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
But say they found relief elsewhere.
I turned to cannabis in lieu of pills, and I've never turned back.
A growing number of people say that they're getting life-changing medicine not from a traditional pharmacy, but from a modern medical-grade marijuana operation like this one.
777 in Los Angeles grows and dispenses marijuana. Recreational use is legal for adults in California, but 777's Cameron Wald says more than half of his customers are not looking for a high. They want to heal.
They have horrible pain. They can't function on a day-to-day basis without medical marijuana.
It's not just joints. People are also putting cannabis oils under their tongues and rubbing cannabis salves on anything that hurts. But there's no scientific evidence any of it works. That's why Dr. Jeffrey Chen started UCLA's Cannabis Research Initiative.
This is something where the public consumption of cannabis has already far outpaced our scientific understanding, so we really desperately need to catch up.
One major stumbling block, the federal government considers marijuana a Schedule I drug, the same as heroin. That means research is highly restricted.
If we can be allowed to study this in a clinical way consistently, I think that there's going to be a lot of things gained.
Robbie and Alex, who both now work for 777, by the way, swear by the power of pot to relieve pain.
Within 15 minutes, I'm feeling a relief that makes me be able to work again.
Cannabis may not be a cure yet, but for now, a comfort to those who need it. In Los Angeles, Erica Edwards, NBC News.
Okay, so let's fly over to one more state, and then we'll go international with a couple of stories. In Iowa, parents' emotional pleas grant CBD use for autism treatment. You got to fight for your rights.
It's heartbreaking, especially when they're nonverbal and they can't tell you what's wrong.
6-year-old Aubrey Gant can't tell her parents how she's feeling. Instead, she shows them, like when she's happy. But when she's upset and can't say anything, she bangs her head, cries, or worse, when she takes her medication.
She stuck all 4 fingers down her throat. She made herself throw up. I just lost it as a parent, and I thought, I cannot do this to my kid. And I can't be the only one that's going through this.
The Gants want their daughter to live a better life. That's why Lindsay filed a petition to get autism added to the list of debilitating diseases that are eligible for medical marijuana in Iowa. Friday, it went before the Iowa Board of Medicine, and Lindsay wasn't the only mom there asking for help.
To have the opportunity to have this medication as an option is something that would be absolutely fantastic for families like ours.
And when the board announced their decision, she couldn't help but cry, tears of joy.
I would do anything for my kids, and I'm hoping to bring this to Iowa, not only for Aubrey, but for many families.
Now, even through her tears, Aubrey can blow a kiss knowing she may soon have another option to ease her pain.
I love you. You blow a heart. Good job.
In Des Moines, Tommy Clark, KCCI News, Iowa's news leader.
Parents fighting for their kids to use this medicine. The autism stuff is amazing. I've seen videos. It's just helping so much autistic people on the autism spectrum. But it's not always legal, and you have to fight. And we're going to fly from Iowa right now, where that last story was from, about 20 hours or so to Sydney, Australia, where parents walk free from court after treating their son's autism with cannabis. They won. They lucked out.
Before heading into court today, Jamie Blake didn't have high hopes. He was expecting jail time. He and his partner... Before heading into court today, Jamie Blake didn't have high hopes. He was expecting jail time. He and his partner charged with giving non-psychoactive cannabis oil to their son, Callum, who has autism.
He understands that we might not be coming home today. He's pretty upset about it.
The couple's Calliope home was raided in November last year, police finding cannabis and production materials. Jamie was charged with 4 drug-related offences, his partner Stephanie McKay with 5.
It's been tough, it's been rough, and Callum, he's suffered dramatically from it.
The online community has rallied behind the family with nearly 5,000 signatures on a petition urging the Director of Public Prosecutions to drop the charges and more than $10,000 raised for their legal costs. Justice Graham Crowe accepted a submission saying the couple were only trying to do the right thing and said there was no evidence Callum was injured. His final sentence, a $100 fine for each charge for the mother and father, with no convictions recorded.
Thankfully, the justice system has shone today. You are lucky to have this judge in this community.
I don't drink, but I'm going to have a drink for this one.
And with red tape set to be slashed in Queensland in the coming months, it's hoped this case will be among the last of its kind. Brianna Scully, 9 News.
Okay, so we flew from Iowa to Sydney. Now we're going to fly back to Canada. And speaking of flying, this is Global News Canada about flying from Canada to the United States and how it's being handled. There were people that were coming into the MJ BizCon last month, and there was problems if you're in the cannabis industry, believe it or not. Here's this story from Global News Canada.
Flying through YVR to the U.S., you might notice small signs that warn travelers that carrying pot across the border is illegal. One U.S. attorney says that isn't half the story. Canadians can run into trouble crossing the border with any amount of involvement in the marijuana industry.
If you admit that you're involved in the cannabis industry in the United States, even as an investor, you could be barred for life from coming to the United States.
It happened last week to a Canadian who was attending a convention for the cannabis industry in Las Vegas and was planning to invest in a cannabis production facility. He wasn't alone. Dozens of Canadians, including a journalist, were either detained at the border for hours or outright refused entry. Len Saunders says the Canadian government is doing a terrible job of warning citizens what's at stake.
The Canadian government telling people that they have to admit and tell the truth, that's self-incrimination. So what the Canadian government needs to do is they need to advise Canadians what their rights are at the border.
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol has softened its stance on people with direct ties to legal weed in Canada. But that doesn't extend to their own country.
So the best advice I can give to fellow Canadians is to say nothing and be denied entry. Because by saying nothing, the worst thing that can happen is basically they turn you around for not cooperating, and you can always go in another day and try.
Pot might be legal in 10 states and decriminalized in more than a dozen more, but it is still a federal felony. And U.S. border guards could slap anyone with a lifetime travel ban. Going into the U.S. is a journey fraught with potential pitfalls. Aaron MacArthur, Global News.
Okay, so we'll be right back with Peter St. Cyr, who's a New Mexico journalist who's been covering the cannabis industry here for many, many years. And we're going to talk about Mr. Duke Rodriguez, his Ultra Health dispensary, LNPP, who's trying to take medicine away from patients by having manufacturers disqualified from their licenses. He's trying to hurt the program once again with his greed. This is my opinion, and we're going to talk about it. So, New Mexico, listen up after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio. Radio show.
Hi, this is Steve D'Angelo, and you are listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today, I have Peter St. Cyr, who is a award-winning journalist from here in New Mexico, and he's been covering the cannabis industry almost from its beginnings here. And this week, Peter, you posted just the other day some interesting information about a lawsuit that's going on between Ultra Health and the Department of Health, who regulates and makes the rules for the medical cannabis program. So tell me about this lawsuit, if you would, please.
Well, so one of them licensed nonprofit producers, Ultra Health, which manages the original Top Organics nonprofit producer, filed a complaint for declaratory judgment in Santa Fe District Court. And they're asking the judge to order the Department of Health to, stop the disparity of licensing between the 35 nonprofit producers who are licensed to grow and dispense medical cannabis to patients who've qualified for the program under certain, qualifying conditions. Because if they grow up to 450 plants, their annual licensing fee is $90,000.
Why is it $90,000?
Well, that could be a good question to ask the Department of Health. A hospital that dispenses a whole lot more medication and serves a lot more people here in New Mexico, I believe that their annual licensing fee is only $3,000.
Okay, but let's cut to the chase. The reason that there's a $90,000 fee is based on a plant count, on how many plants a particular, all the LMPPs can grow. It's a sliding fee. There's fees that are less than $90,000 for growing less plants. So the $90,000 is about growing plants. It's based on how many plants they can grow. So I don't understand why Ultra Health is saying that they feel they're unfairly being charged when the manufacturers who are doing the extractions for the LMPPs, of course, their fees to be a manufacturer is much less. It's around $1,000, but they're not being charged to grow plants. So I don't see a correlation between the two.
Well, the correlation would be we have to go back to the context of the original Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, which the legislature passed and Governor Bill Richardson signed back in 2007. And then it took a few years, I believe until 2009, for the Department of Health to come up with the program rules to operate this program. And in the original legislation, the lawmakers wanted the Department of Health to come up with a way to dispense the medication to patients in a safe manner, and they wanted an adequate supply. But they never envisioned that there would be, various classes of licenses for the Department of Health to issue. And let's, also cut to the chase that the fee for people to extract the oils and to make these edible cannabis-derived products like salves and brownies and various candies, or even now some beverages, for folks that cannot smoke it or prefer, the longer-lasting impact of edibles, to only pay a licensing fee of $1,000. And that gives those licensees a huge competitive advantage in the market.
What is that advantage? Because these extractors that are paying $1,000 to extract for the LMPPs, who don't do it for themselves, they cannot sell to the end user. They're just licensed and have background checks on them in order to be able to make these extractions and make these products for the medical cannabis community. So I don't see them being the same thing. And what I do see is that that Duke Rodriguez, once again, who is on the cutting edge of doing despicable things, is not adhering to what these rules are, and he's done that from the very beginning. He did not go through the scrutiny of the other LNPPs in order to use this license from Top Organics. He wrangled that, and the Department of Health, who makes the rules, did allow him to wrangle that particular license from Top Organics, which, according to the information we have, says that they pay the nonprofit up to $12,500 a year for the use of that license in order to grow the plants and distribute them and make products and so forth. So looking at number 57 in the lawsuit, it says, under the current rules, Ultra Health must be a nonprofit entity, a requirement not imposed on the manufacturers. Well, my understanding is that Ultra Health is really a managing company that does not have to be nonprofit. It's Top Organics that is the nonprofit. So what's going on there? Is Ultra Health a nonprofit? Duke Rodriguez's Ultra Health, is that a nonprofit?
They are a for-profit management company of New Mexico Top Organics, which is a nonprofit at the state level. And, what you have to really do, though, Larry, to assess it, I think, fairly, is to remember that while the Department of Health is charged with making the rules and administering the program, they have to do so within the statutory framework. And you'll remember that I had to sue the Department of Health over their confidentiality rule. And our argument at that time was that the Department of Health exceeded their statutory authority in the rulemaking, and that they had forgotten the framework that the lawmakers had given them. And it does provide the licensees a competitive disadvantage. They face a competitive disadvantage in the market when they are required to operate as a nonprofit and pay these higher fees based on the plant count.
Okay, but
and
Peter,
here's the problem. The problem is that nonprofits, even Top Organics and all the folks that work for the patients and then are managed by these for-profit management companies, they still have to be audited, and those annual audits are fairly expensive, and they have to provide all these strenuous and detailed reports to the Department of Health every 3 months. And the licensees that are manufacturing the cannabis derivative products are not required.
They're not in the same
annual
business.
Reports and audits, and so yet they're handling cannabis maybe outside of the parameters and the framework that were provided that exempt patients and the non-profit producers from criminal prosecution.
Okay, let me interrupt. Okay. These are two different kinds of businesses. One is being charged large fees in order to grow marijuana, okay, and to sell marijuana to patients, the end users, okay? The manufacturers are here to help the LNPPs by taking their medicine, and much of it, from what I hear from the manufacturers, is really crap, even after all these years. Okay, and then they have to deal with getting bad material and try to turn it into good, clean medicine. I believe that they're two different entities, okay? And right here in the number 57 of the lawsuit, it says, under current rules, Ultra Health must be a nonprofit entity. Well, Ultra Health isn't, right? They're the for-profit entity, okay? Under the rules, Ultra Health, which manufactures products under its license, does so at a competitive disadvantage, is what the thing says, the lawsuit, as compared to the manufacturers who pay far less lower fees. I think a judge is going to look at this. Now, I have no background in law, but a judge is going to look at this and say, these are two different businesses. And the Department of Health has to make, there's statute, as you know, and you know this stuff better than I do, actually. And then there's the rules that they make, okay? I don't see where Ultra Health is being hurt by this, because they're in a different business than the manufacturers, unless they manufacture for themselves. Now, I happen to know, at least years ago, Ultra Health was using these manufacturers themselves, okay, to make certain products.
The face of the law and the words in the statute, and remember, the statute is going to govern the rules, and they cannot exceed the statutory authority that lawmakers gave to regulators at the health department. And when you look at the state law, it says producers. It never says or creates a class called manufacturers. And therefore, the rules that apply to the producers are the same rules that would have to apply to the so-called manufacturers. And if they wanted to create a more producer licenses for the manufacturers, they could do so. But then the licensing fees and auditing and annual report requirements would have to be the same. You cannot create an economic advantage for manufacturers, and the word manufacturer is never used in the state statute. And so they have to be producers.
Okay.
And you can't have separate rules for you and separate rules for me.
Very
in a
good.
market.
Stop right there. I like what you just said, because here we have Duke Rodriguez, who is someone who doesn't play by the rules, and now he's suing the people that are making the rules. He did not go through the stringent application process, as you know. How do you feel about the way he got his license?
I think that you have to look at the business as operated by a board. Nonprofits are managed by boards, and those boards members will come and they will go. And the license lives on into perpetuity. And if a board is replaced because of their decision to get out of the business, what would they do with the business? Turn it back to the Department of Health?
I happen to think that the rules and of the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act does have some provisions in there for turning your license back in. They are not transferable. Okay. Listen. I happen to think, and I've been watching this for a long time, as you well know, and I've been on Duke Rodriguez's case for a long time as well, because he jumped the line. He didn't go through the scrutiny and the background checks and everything that everybody else had to do, wait years and years to try to get a license. He jumped the line, he jumped the rules, and now I believe he's opening up a Pandora's box for himself, because if he's not going to abide by the rules, and he thinks that the people making the rules aren't allowed to make the rules, I happen to think that Ultra Health's license should be taken away from them. They've been nothing but doing bad things, I think, for the industry to make themselves prominent and take over. Duke is a publicity hound. He's never on the right side of things for the patients. They were trying to take away PPLs a couple of years ago when Leonard was still with Ultra Health, and I hear he's no longer there. So, I just think that this is a bad thing. If the ultimate outcome is for Ultra Health to, who is in business and takes care of a lot of patients, if they're to shut down the current manufacturers, they're putting people who entered into this business in good faith with the Department of Health and the medical cannabis industry. These people have families. These people are making really great products, mostly with the crap that's being given to them. There's maybe 2 or 3 dispensaries that really know how to grow. And I think that this is bad for the patients. I think that Duke continues to show that he doesn't care about the patients, and all he cares about is himself and getting into taking over and having a monopoly. That's my personal opinion, and I think it's going to hurt the patients.
I think that your assessment is shared by others, but I think that it is faulty on its premise. There was a huge disparity of cannabis available for rural patients, and Duke expanded and took it to parts of the state where patients were having to either pay a delivery fee and wait for the car to come by once
I get
a
that,
month.
Peter. I get that.
He has now built dispensaries in small towns like Hobbs, and they're opening up in Clayton.
I understand his move, his land grab move to get dispensaries in the outer areas. However, he's only currently has 450 plants like everybody else, and to have 20 dispensaries with 450 plants, most dispensaries can't even supply themselves one dispensary with that kind of. Now, I blame the Department of Health for that. Okay, I blame the Department of Health for allowing current LMPPs to open up 3 and 4 shops in Albuquerque in one area where there's 50 shops probably in Albuquerque, and those outer areas aren't being served. But looking at it from my seat, from all these years, I think most of the dispensaries, including Ultra Health, have been opening up these to get ready for recreational, and it has nothing to do with medical cannabis and serving the patients. If it was, most of these LMPPs would be doing a better job after all these years. There's certain LMPPs. You put out the great report a couple of years ago showing how much all these LMPPs were, who was growing and who was growing a lot, who was growing a little. Okay, so again, if you've heard me over the last year or so, I'm for separating the medical program from the recreational program, and I want Duke and these other Dukes to choose whether they want to be medical and serve the medical industry or be recreational. They can have a choice. If they choose to be medical and they want to open up a recreational license, they should have a leg up on getting a recreational license, but they should be different grows. They're different consumers, the medical consumers, the patients, the sick people, from the recreational consumers. So I want the separation. Now, Michelle Lujan Grisham has promised to shore up the medical program and make it better, and I'm really hoping that we can separate them, because Duke doesn't want to be in the medical industry. He wants to be in the recreational industry, and so do 90% of the other dispensaries. Now, there's my rant for this. You can comment on that if you want, Pete.
I think that you may be aware that the courts have consistently come down on the side of this particular producer and held the Department of Health responsible for the original intent of the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, which is to have a producers network in place that provides a safe and adequate supply of cannabis to patients. And a court just determined that the 450 plant count amount was a arbitrary and capricious number, and they were ordered into settlement agreements with Duke and Ultra Health to determine a new appropriate level of plant counts. Right now, they're only allowed to produce it in and grow it in one facility for a state, which is the 5th largest land area in the country, and then to disperse it to those patients living in rural areas. And frankly, I believe in this case, the judge is again going to award this declaratory judgment based on the fact you can't have, rules and requirements for producers that are more stringent and more expensive than the rules that and requirements for manufacturers. And I've read the act several times, and I don't find the word manufacturer in the law at all. And that, comes down to the same basis that we prevailed when we got rid of the confidentiality rules. And the Department of Health, in this case, has clearly exceeded its authority and given competitive advantage to people who, frankly, aren't even criminally exempt from handling cannabis under the state law. And probably state police could move in and, question them and about their possession of cannabis, because they're not licensed producers.
They're not licensed, but you're exactly right. They are licensed manufacturers by the medical cannabis program to make medicine. Okay,
but
they're two different businesses.
Authorized the Department of Health to create producers.
All right, so if
they did not authorize the health department to create manufacturers.
Okay, so who's responsible for New Mexican having that blow up?
Well, I would say that safety is going to have to be a top priority of every single producer. And, I used to be a lot harsher on these producers at the beginning. And then I realized, what? It is a brand new market. It's evolving. And sadly, in that case, there was mistakes made, and we learned from them. When we shot for the moon, there were rockets after rockets after rockets that failed, and people lost their lives. They were explorers. They were adventurers.
Right. I totally agree. We're all pioneers here, and we're learning. We're riding by the seat of our pants. We have to change things as we go along. But here we have a man who doesn't care about the rules and goes around the rules, and now he wants to sue the rule makers. I don't see these two businesses as being in competition with each other. This is an ancillary business to manufacture these products for the LMPPs. They're not in the same business, Peter. I think a judge is going to look at this and they're going to say, the $90,000 is for growing 450 plants, and the $50,000 is for growing 100. Whatever the scheduling is as far as this is concerned. I don't see it being the same. Now, if Duke should prevail again because of his wonderful history in New Mexico, what's going to happen to these manufacturers?
I would not know what is going to happen. I do know that there may be a temporary injunction from them being able to handle this and to have to then apply for one of the new producer licenses that the new governor has decided that she wants the health department to open up again in the market. Right now there are, I believe I said earlier 35, but I think one dropped out and there may only be 34. Another one in Las Cruces faces revocation of their license for some inappropriate behavior that was alleged.
Mother Earth Organics or
Mother
Compassionate.
Earth, yes.
What about Compassionate Distributors? They don't do anything weird out there on that farm?
I do not know. I have not heard about that. I know that there was a death on their property and that was being reviewed, but may have been cleared. And for the last year or so, I've been more advocating for open government than following the cannabis on a reporting beat.
All right, we'll talk about that in a minute as soon as we finish up. I want people to know what you're doing and about open government, because we really need open government. Okay, it's really, really important, and that's why you sued the DOH years ago to get information that they were not being transparent on. So if Duke prevails and they get an injunction, all these manufacturers that are supplying medicine for patients are going to have to close up or something and wait for a appeal or a lawsuit or whatever. But the bottom line is patients will suffer. There will not be enough oil and edibles and RSO available, and patients are going to suffer. So I hope Duke can go to sleep at night knowing that what he's doing is going to make sick people sicker. But then again, I don't believe he's ever really wanted to be in the medical industry and is waiting to be in the rec industry. So now, Eddie, just finish up. Just tie up your position on this, and then we'll tell people about what you're doing.
I'm not sure that there is any statutory remedy available to Ultra Health, and I guess what he would probably be asking for is the rules of the game be level, and that they application fee for them and their annual fee would be either reduced or a requirement that the manufacturers be organized in a nonprofit manner and be required to produce the same kinds of audits and annual reports that they are, to be cleared by the New Mexico State Police from criminal sanctions. I'm not sure that he's looking to stop the manufacturers from being able to produce these cannabis derivative products that have been working for so many people. There really is no statutory relief legal relief for a remedy in the situation. So not being a lawyer, I'm not sure how that will play out. But when the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing football right now, and the rules of the game are the same for both teams, and that needs to happen here.
Yeah, but they're both playing football. Okay, they're both playing the same game. The manufacturers are not playing. Hang on, again, this is like my fourth time on this. These are two different businesses. the manufacturers are not being charged $90,000 for a license because that $90,000 is based on a plant count. The manufacturers are not allowed to have a plant count. I support the fact that if manufacturers want to have a plant count, that maybe with the new administration that they'll be able to step up and grow their own and have some really good medicine that they can make from growing their own. They have more control over of what they're operating on. So I don't understand why you and Duke feel that these two businesses are the same. The $90,000 has nothing to do with anything but a plant count. Okay.
Well, you have to realize and go back to the beginning, and the beginning is in the creation and approval of state statute, and the statute provides for manufacturers, and nowhere in the wording of the law does it create manufacturers. So the Department of Health has clearly exceeded its regulatory authority by creating a class that is not provided for in state law, and that is a problem. And that problem needs to be dealt with. And it needs to be dealt with in the way of leveling the playing field in a capitalist market where the rules need to be the same for people who are doing the same things.
Well, okay, let's just leave it at that, I guess. One of my comments, to your post was that Duke, that thou doth protest too much. Okay, I mean, I personally think that he's hurting our medical industry. He's been hurting it for a while, and I think this action, I don't understand really what his complaint is. I think that he's wrong, obviously, because what's going to happen is patients, again, will suffer. The patients sick people have been suffering since Susana Martinez 8 years ago took office because she didn't want to proliferate the medical cannabis industry, and it caused a lot of problems. That's why Duke is complaining about the plant count that he won, rightfully so.
How does complaining about a plant count that has consistently been responsible for lower harvest yields? And, if you look at economics, supply and demand, the more supply of medication available to meet this growing, exploding number of patients that are registered in the program, I think it's up to, they had a record number of patients added this year.
It's like 65,000
now. If there's more supply to meet this growing demand, the prices will come down.
Okay.
I don't even know what the average price per gram right now is, but I know that in Colorado, where 6 plants on average are grown for every single medical cannabis patient. If you look at New Mexico, it's like a half a plant per patient.
Yeah, do you want to? Okay, there's 2 reasons for that. One is that Governor Martinez and the Attorney of Health, Gallagher, did not want to have more plants, give more plants to these people. They didn't want our program to expand. And the other main reason is 90% of the LMPPs currently licensed to grow can't grow. They can't grow the 450 plants, and if it goes to 1,000, they're going to have more problems because they can't even grow this. There's a difference between growing 10 plants and 20 and 50 and 1,000. These LMPPs, most of them, there are some of them that can grow. Most of them can't grow, and they're going to have big problems. We do need more plant count because there's not enough medicine in the flow for 65,000 patients when it was like 25 when Martinez took office. So yes, we do need it, but I feel bad for the per gram price should have gone down. There's still places charging $13 and $15 a gram for medicine. Okay, and this is just a big problem. Anyway, Peter, thank you for going back and forth with me on this. I understand where you're coming from, and you're a reporter, and you're just really reporting what this lawsuit is about. But tell me, you've been sort of away from the cannabis industry for a year or two. What are you doing now? And I know it has to do with open government and transparency. So tell me about what you're up to, dude.
So, obviously we're still advocating that the people and citizens of the state have access to what the government is doing in their name. And we're going to move open government forward to the next level and make sure that we have access to the databases, because really the new records are created electronically in the invisible realm of ones and zeros. And those kinds of data feeds that we have access to allow people to make rational decisions. And in this business, it'd be, where are the new patients registering? Are they in the what areas of the state? What conditions? Because, we already know that different kinds of strains benefit patients suffering in different ways. And so the more access to data that the government collects in our name that we have, the better. It will engage people. And frankly, our founding fathers knew that knowledge was power. And in a democracy, the currency of democracy should be information. And we're going to make sure that we have access to it all.
Peter, thank you. Where can people, do you have a website or something you want to give out?
Sure. So it's called openaccessnm.com. And right now we are still in the middle of putting our business together. And but we are able to raise some money to help us go to the legislature in January and February to advocate for an open data policy, open data standards, and to hopefully provide the information technology folks some of this new money to build up the infrastructure that we need with hardware, software, and cloud computing. So yes, please register for our news and provide any funds you can to help at openaccessnm.com.
Thank you, Peter St. Cyr, award-winning journalist here in New Mexico. I'm glad you're dipping your toes back into the cannabis information world. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Larry, for having me, and have a very happy holiday.
Thank you, you too. And we'll be right back after this.
Take over my land. $700 billion bailout plan. What happened to this beautiful place that I call home? Violence in the street and the military role. Wherever you go, I say, Jah, Jah, see you.
Greed and corruption. Unbelievable. How people get away with this stuff. I want to thank Peter St. Cyr for explaining the lawsuit and going toe-to-toe with me. Also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you have if you have a story to tell, a product to sell, if you'd like to be on the show, if you're an activist, an advocate, or if you're Duke Rodriguez and you want to be on the show, give me a call. Write me at mail@mmjradio.com. Again, that's mail@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to hear our old shows, you can go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com, also mmjradio.com. We're available on YouTube at LSLove88. Our SoundCloud and Spreaker, if you want audio, is MMJ Radio. We're on CannabisTube.net and also on Now TV channel 937 and the Canon channel coming soon.
The magical marijuana. Shalabah. Shalom.
Peace and love, everybody. Peace and love. And chaos. Where it needs to be. Oh yeah, and fuck Trump. And Duke.